Hello ladies and gentlemen, Leo speaking here from Body Mind Success. Today I'm going to bring to you one of the most powerful systems that I've seen in the last 15 years at least, because that's when it was shared with me and taught to me. And when I first saw it, I was like, yeah, whatever. It's a little thing, whatever. But what I found is that in those 15 years, I've used it every single day of my life. So I certainly hope that you find this useful, that you are able to utilize it within your team to be able to take something from an idea stage all the way to actually make it happen. Okay? Now, there's a couple of warnings that I'm going to give you ahead of time. Number one, don't fall into the trap of thinking that this is because it looks so simple and because I'm going to use some funny little characters that this is something to be ignored. It is very powerful. You're using it every day whether you know it or not. And it's much more powerful when you do know it. That's number one. Number two, it's that you're most likely going to do what everybody does, which is start thinking of it as a personality profile. It's not. It's not intended to be a personality profile. It's a process system, meaning something from beginning all the way to the end. Okay, and I'm going to share within that a couple of funny stories that I think you will enjoy in the process. So let me get right down to it, and to make sure that you know exactly what this whole thing represents. Okay. Now, the first thing on here is that each of the letters represents a character. Okay, in particular, the H. The H stands for a hair. And each little character that I'm going to share with you has some characteristics about them. So let's think of a bunny, of a hare. What do they do? What do they like to do? They like to jump. They're fast. They're quick. They go from here. That you've heard the story of the tortoise and the hare. And the hare finishes and it's going flying, and you see it in the cartoons. And they're always excited and moving and jumping and going from here, from there. And start thinking about how you're even feeling right now as I'm talking so fast and going into this and exciting energy. And yes, that's exactly what a hare playground is like. These individuals are creative. They're early adapters. These are people that love to play, being visionaries. They're the idea generators. They're creative problem solvers. They love the new ideas. They're random thinkers. So they're all over the place. They're excellent for brainstorming. Conceptually, they get it. They see it. They're like, wow, okay, I can totally see it. They're spontaneous. They're impulsive. They see the big picture. They're high energy and they're original. They're fresh. They love that creative process. They're amazing problem solvers, and they can take anything and reframe it. Now, as I list these things down, I got to tell you right now, don't even try to write these down. At the end of this video, you'll be able to have a download of this so you can go ahead and check it out and have it posted, do whatever you want with it. But the point of this is that even as I'm speaking, notice how I'm speaking at this fast pace. This is kind of one of the little hints that you'll be able to tell when you're speaking to a hare, because they get so excited about everything. And then as soon as something loses their oomph, then they go on to the next exciting thing. Which brings some challenges to that particular group, which is they tend to be all over the place. Their organization is definitely not their strength. Structure drives them nuts because they love to be able to run around from left to right, up, down, anywhere they can go. Their follow through tends to be a bit of a challenge just by themselves. They get bored easily. Try to put hair into a meeting, forget it. They're going to be like doing 20 million other things in their mind and playing with anything to keep them entertained while that boring meeting is going on for them. Their evaluation of ideas is just like, boom, I think it'll fly, boom, and they figure out a solution, make that happen, and they'll go with that. Their risk management, oftentimes, they're not really as concerned about the risk of what will happen. They're just coming up and seeing the vision of where this idea could go. So it's easy for them to lose sight of where they were originally headed. And so then anything that's constraining to them, forget it. They have a tough time operating in that. They get restless, and they're very impatient. So if you know anybody around you that kind of has those, think about the hare as somebody who is the creative type. And the latest and the greatest. They're easily excited by new ideas, the visions, and that kind of thing. That's the playground that they love to play in. Some of you might already be smiling, and some of you are probably already driving nuts because I'm talking really fast, and that's exactly where they tend to operate, because that's how their brain is kind of going. Now, look at an owl. Let's think of an owl. When you were talking about an owl, what does an owl do? An owl's perched on a tree. It generally is considered kind of a wise one kind of thing. But I want to take it from a slightly different angle and say, hey, when they're sitting on the tree, they're perched, they're looking around, they're looking to see, they're evaluating, they're taking a look and see where things are. Maybe there's a mouse over here, a snake over there, or whatever it is that they're trying to hunt for their meal. But you don't see an owl ever flying around really making circles waiting to see what's going to happen. No, they're very efficient. They have a system in place. And in essence, that's kind of how you can think about an owl. They're the planners. They love systems. They love organization. They're very practical. They prioritize. They take things they're able to prioritize with ease. They're very good at directing and bridging concepts together. They can explore alternatives. They're very insightful. And they, like I mentioned before, planning for them is really easy. They can take an idea and actually expand it out. They can enhance on that. They love that structure. And they're considered the advancers, the one that move things forward. Take the ideas of the hare and be able to organize them and to be able to prioritize them. Now, their challenges is they tend to be a little bit of planners, and oftentimes they get so caught up on planning that they don't do. They need the hares because trying to take an idea from its inception, it's generally difficult for them, or it takes a lot more energy for them to get that off the ground before they can really work with it. So they can get bogged down in that process and move a lot slower. And it may be overly structured for some people to be able to operate with that. So, but as an overall, an owl would be somebody you can think about as in terms of systems, a planner, a prioritizer. Okay. Now, turtle, you might already imagine, why does a turtle have a shell? They have a shell because they want to be safe. They're cautious. They're slow and steady, so that anything that's traditional, that's tested, that's true, that's tried and true, proven, there's proofs that there's solutions, there's evidence, there's detail. They're very much troubleshooters. Consequences do matter for them, and significantly, because it deals again back with safety. They will debate things till they are blue in the face because they want to make sure they can take the lowest risk possible and they can identify the problems. So in essence, they're the refining. They're very good at refining. Their challenges, obvious paralysis of analysis. Paralysis of analysis. They're slow and steady, wins the race. That's their motto, in a sense. And you'll know that you're speaking with a turtle because most of their sentences will start with but or however. And what about this? And what about that? And what about, and oftentimes they're considered the naysayers, and they're very often misunderstood because they tend to be like, when most people, it drives them nuts. It's like you're always fine looking at the negative things. But if you learn how to work with the turtle, it is phenomenal. You get a customer who's coming at you from a turtle perspective, and they come on board, they are lifers. They're the ones that it's very hard for them to get out because they got to go through the whole process again. Whereas a hare, go back to that, it would be jump easy in, easy out. They'll usually see many other possibilities. So just keep that in mind. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Finally, the squirrel. Let's think of a squirrel. What does a squirrel do? A squirrel collects nuts, right? Now, put a squirrel in a parking lot, and they're going to be incredibly ineffective. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They run around all day, spend a lot of energy, try to figure it all out, and they can't get it done. But you put a squirrel under a nut tree, and they're going to be incredibly effective. They are efficient. They know what to do. They know how to do it. They'll get it done, and they'll do it all day long. So the squirrel is the doer. They tell me what to do, and I'll do it. They're very methodical. They're reliable. They're definitely action takers, and they get the job done. But they're usually are very good at the step-by-step and all the detail work, and basically they execute whatever it is that you need to get done. But the challenges for them tend to be they're not necessarily the visionaries, the ones that can see the big picture. They don't like to develop the system necessarily. They'll use the system, but they're not the big picture. So they don't necessarily know where to focus. If you have them again back in the parking lot, they're not going to be nearly as effective. So now that you have the four basic animals that take something from an idea all the way to actually making it happen, to actually become true, let's take a look at what are the most functional and the most dysfunctional system, a pathway to be able to get something done. So let's start with, before I even do that, let me share with you that this is something that over time has become very clear to me, that it goes into 4 stages. And here are the 4 stages. The first one is intrapersonal. That means within yourself. Whenever you're playing in different playgrounds within yourself, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Then there's interpersonal. How are you interacting with somebody else? The third is a group setting or an organization setting. How do you handle a situation when there's multiple different personalities or different playgrounds that they like to play in. And the final one is at a culture level. How, when you get to a culture level where everybody around you really has that embedded in them, there's power in that because now you play from each other's strengths. So let's get right to it and talk about intrapersonal. So because this applies in all levels, but let's take a look at one of the most dysfunctional settings that you could possibly have, or conversations you can have within yourself. Have you ever had an idea that you sit and go, ooh, let's say you want to build a website. Oh, let's build a website. Well, where am I going to start? Okay, there's a hare and a turtle. Oh, but we can just do some videos online. We can check out the videos online. Yeah, but how do you know you can trust them? Well, we can pay for a system. Yeah, where are you going to get the money? But we can just get some of the savings that we have. Yeah, but now what are you going to be able to do? Replace those. So it's a back and forth. Have you ever had that kind of thing? So if I'm doing this right, at this point, you're probably laughing because you're going, oh my God, that is so me, or that's so so-and-so. There's a back and forth. And if you go back and forth between a hare and turtle, hare and turtle, hare and turtle, then the idea that you were trying to get off the ground never gets enough steam. Never gets enough power, never gets enough energy, and new ideas need that energy in order to be able to move forward. So the least functional relationship between ourselves or an organization is to have a hare in the room at the same time trying to get an idea off the ground. So how do you work with that? When you're working with a hare and a turtle, you want to make sure that you separate the two. You separate the two. If you're in hare mode, stay in hare mode. Play in that playground. It's exciting. It's fun. But with an understanding that just because you're coming up with all these ideas doesn't mean that you're going to have to fly with all of them at the same time. At that point, then you'll be able to have the turtle be able to have a certain level of peacefulness and go, okay, they're not going to move without having gone through the turtle of the stage. And we will get to that. Now, you may also have seen another one that is not quite as functional either. It gets some things done, but it's not quite as functional. And that would be the hare squirrel. It would look something like this. Let's put up the site. Okay, great, I put it up. Now, what should we use? Okay, well, you use WordPress. Okay, we'll jump on WordPress. Now, what do I put on it? Let's just put in that we're selling this product. Okay, we'll put a product this up. And then later on, you come to find out, wait a minute, I didn't have a merchant processor. I didn't have all the rights to put that product up. Oh my God, now somebody's yelling at us because it never went through the turtle phase. It never went and foresaw some of the issues that it could have if it had gone through the whole system. So the hare squirrel is usually, they end up getting some things done. It looks like they're getting things done. And later on, they come to find out that all their work maybe has to be redone because they didn't go through the entire process. So if those are the most dysfunctional, what would be some of the most functional? It's pretty straightforward now. You take the hare and you create, you're getting that visionary, creative brainstorm stage, and you let all these ideas flow, as crazy as they are, as phenomenal, as ludicrous as they seem. I write them all down, have them all there, have them be part of what just builds a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. Let that drive. Then, before it gets to a turtle state, you want to send that over to an owl. Because the owl, by its nature, will go, okay, there's a ton of ideas here. There's no way we're going to go through all of them. So let's systemize them a little bit. Let's prioritize which one will go first, second, and third. And from there, let's take the top ones that we actually would work with so that we can actually advance forward a little bit. Now from there, once they have that, then it gets handed over to the turtle. Now it gets handed from a perspective of being able to say, hey, I value your skill. I value your ability to be able to foresee things that we may not be able to foresee. So can you please tell us, what would you need in order for these 3 or 4 things that we're looking to move forward? What do you think is needed to make sure that we take into account? Now the turtle usually has never been treated like this, and they say, wow, you actually want my input? Yes. So then you take that input and they'll happily share. Say, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And when you say, thank you for sharing that with me. Awesome. They feel appreciated, for number one. They are actually, for once, taken into a role that they're not used to receiving, because normally they're the naysayers, right? And they're being appreciated for it. Now, you turn around, before you head it off to the squirrel, you go to the hare again. and you say, hey, because they love problem solving. They can come up with tons of solutions for all those issues. Again, the turtle's not in the room. You let them come up with a ton of ideas of how to resolve those issues, and then you bring it back to the owl. Now the owl prioritizes again, goes back to the turtle, say, what about this? And then what do we think of this? They say, well, that one I agree, that one I agree with, this, you still need this, this, and this. Great. You may need to do this a couple of times. So that little triangle, you may need to do it a few times. And once you get to a point where a turtle says, that might work. Maybe that'll work. Then that means go, 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 go. Now it goes off to the squirrel. The squirrel gets it. They know what to do. They know they already know what you wanted them to do, how to do it, and they just run with it. And at that point, the likelihood of that getting off the ground is going to be incredibly higher than if you had a hare. So I'm going to share with you, just close this entire process by a couple of quick things. Number one is make sure that you know which playground you're playing in. Get clear on that for yourself, for the interaction you're having with somebody else, for for where you are with your organization, with the group. That is an awareness, first of all. Second, keep in mind, do you have people in strengths, in each other's strengths? If you're a strong hare, do you have a strong owl around you? See, for me, my strength has been an owl and a good strong turtle as well. So those come in very handy, but here's where that has become in very handy to be able to help people who are visionaries, who are trying to grow a business, who are trying to grow something big, but they tend to not be sure where to take it from there. Or they need that support from the owl because it'll help prioritize, systemize, and organize so that it can move forward, it can keep moving. And from them, it's very easy to communicate. There's a nice bridge between the hare and the turtle, that owl. And then by the time it gets to the squirrel, it just gets done. So, do you have an owl? Do you know, you got to, somebody, the guy who shared this with me, Alan Patton, he said, you got to get a who to go to. Got to get a who to go to. Okay? So, who do you need to go to? Who do you still need in your team, in your strength, to make sure that you can go through the whole process? Because you've done it. You've created. If you've created anything, you've gone through this process. There's absolutely no question. You had ideas, you prioritized them to some way, you try to figure out what might go wrong with it, and then address that early on, and then when you felt like you were ready, you're able to take action and make that work. That's the process. There's no question around that. But the question is, if you're a strong hare, if you're there, how strong is your owl, and how much more efficient would you be if you had a strong owl? That is where you want to look. And then obviously turtles come a dime a dozen, so they're pretty easy to find. And the squirrels, you would need obviously somebody that can get stuff done. Okay, so let me share with you, just as I close this, a couple of quick little stories that I think you might find amusing. So one time I used to be a manager for a massage clinic, and there was a meeting with all of our massage therapists and our owner, and our idea was to bring more business in. So we brought everybody in and said, hey guys, what should we do? They said, okay, well, let's, a bunch of ideas came around and finally came to, let's put up a sign on this highly trafficked area. Awesome. What are we going to put on that sign? Everybody's coming up with pretty conservative, thoughts. It's like, oh, $5 off, massage here, free massage if you, blah, 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 whatever. And after all that was done, I remember at this point, I didn't have this tool. I was just, before I had this tool, the owner busts out with, I know what we can put. We could put $5 hand jobs. Now, could you just imagine the riot that we nearly had in that meeting? The turtles, their safety is like, what the are you thinking? What in the world could you possibly even say that? We're in a massage industry, blah, blah, blah. Nearly chaos just broke loose, and you've probably been in a situation similar to that. But here's where the hare energy comes into play. What the owner meant was $5 hand reflexology massages to get them into the door and from there finish it off. Now obviously the idea was way off. There's no way we could use that because the industry is already tainted as is. But what it did do is it pushed everybody else to be able to think outside the box and to go, okay, we need to get somebody's attention in order for them to come in. And that was powerful. So powerful things comes from those crazy ideas. So don't shoot the hare down. That's why you let that hare energy be crazy, but with a guideline to say, hey, until we get past past each one of the stages of the playground, we're not going to necessarily act on it, all right? As long as you agree with that, that's fine. Another example, and I'll close with this one, this will be the last one, is there was the same individual who taught me this, Alan Fadden. We were going to do a training, and it was a 3-weekend training, and we wanted to have a phone number that would be something like 1-800-HOTS or something along those lines. So first, it was handed off to another individual who was a hair to try to get that job done. Well, that was a mistake, because you're trying to hand it off to another hair who doesn't have a very strong follow through. It was pretty tough for them to actually get it done. So a couple of weeks went by and didn't get done. So I jumped on and said, hey, I'll take care of it. Great. I jumped on. I came up with a couple of phone numbers, called up 1-800 whatever, and they said, well, that one's taken, that one's taken, that one's taken. I'm like, all right. So I spent half an hour, came up with a bunch of others. They said, oh, that one's taken. Those are all taken. I'm like, So then I spent another hour trying to come up with like a bunch of other ones. I came up with maybe 5 or 6 or 7 more. And they said, okay, taken. So I got frustrated. I was angry. I was like, I was wasting all this time. So I went back to the founder and said, hey, I'm having problems with this. They're all the names that I've chosen are taken. He goes, well, how many do you need? I said, well, give me as many as you can. And I said, how much time? I said, do you need me to call you back? He goes, no, just get a pen and pencil, and just tell me how many you want, and I'll tell you. I said, okay, well, give me as many as you can in the next 5 minutes. He goes, okay. So he literally rattled off nearly 30 phone numbers in those 5 minutes. And what's funny is that when I called the service, the second one ended up being the correct one, the one that we could use. Now, if I had done that right off the bat, imagine how much more time I would have saved myself in pain and headache and trouble. And that is where you exemplifies the power of being able to use each other's strengths. And here's the other thing, that when you're an owl, or when you're a turtle, or when you're a squirrel and you hang around with a hare, some of that's gonna rub off. And vice versa. If you're a hare and you need to be a little more systemized, then when you hang around with a strong owl, that'll pull that more, they'll strengthen that for you. So having that team is incredibly powerful. So I wish that I could have cut this video a little shorter, but I wanted to make sure that this idea and the clarity of this came through. So I was not going to cut it short. And I certainly hope that you see the value in what I'm sharing here with you. Now, why are we giving this away? Because we've seen so many people, so many individuals where they don't know where they stand and they don't know how to put their teams together. And in that part, that is where it comes in handy to be able to have an owl to be able to support that process. So if you certainly have more questions about this, if you're wondering how you might be able to structure your organization in a way that you can be working off of each other's strengths, that's where you can contact bodymindsuccess.com/contact, and we'll be happy to be able to support you in whatever way that we can. All right, so enjoy seeing the hares, the owls, the turtles, and the squirrel playgrounds as you go about your day. Enjoy it, have fun with it, and I would love your feedback. If you like this video, click like, make a comment below, share it, and go ahead and subscribe to our channel. I'll be happy to have you be able to share more of this information with you. Have a phenomenal day and enjoy.